Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
When it comes to feeling anxious, many people have experienced this from time to time in their lives. But there is a big difference between feeling a little anxious because maybe you have a big test or a job interview and living with anxiety on a regular basis. So today I want to talk about a few different nutrients that can zero in on those who are dealing with more chronic states of anxiety. So I am Amanda Williams, MD, MPH, and what we know is that anxiety, this is a normal response to stress, and it does actually serve a purpose in the body. It can help us, with that fight or flight response, so we're not putting ourselves into a harmful or dangerous situation. But when that anxiety becomes more of a commonplace, it's a regular occurrence, then we fall into more of the anxiety disorder. We're not just having a moment where we're feeling anxious. And this is the big difference. And we know that when it comes to anxiety disorder, that it kind of breaks it down into three different categories. You have generalized anxiety disorder, you have panic disorder, and then you have, obsessive compulsive disorder, which can also tie into different phobias and social anxiety disorder. But we know that anxiety disorders in general, they develop through this complex interaction between the brain and the body's stress response network. So when we're thinking about our adrenals, so that HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, and we also look at the GI system and understand the functional role that our microbiome actually plays when it comes to regulating our anxiety. So we know that anxiety in and of itself is a big problem for many people throughout this country and throughout the world. And it happens to be growing exponentially in terms of how many people are actually dealing with anxiety. It's estimated that in the United States, about 20% of the U.S. population has some form of anxiety disorder. So, that's quite a few people. That's 1 in 5 people are dealing with significant anxiety on a regular basis. And this can certainly lead to more complex issues in the body. When we look at cardiovascular disease, when we look at our, different metabolic disorders, looking at GI involvement, the immune system clearly can be involved. And we look at, different mood disorders, including more significant depression. So most people, when they are told, by their doctor, yes, you definitely have anxiety, they usually give them a prescribed medication. Now, the problem is that many people who are anxious sometimes either don't take the medication because then they have the worry of what's this medication going to do to me, or they are just not responsive to the medication, meaning that when they use it, it's just not really doing much for them. And this can once again drive up more of that anxiety. So we know that the common medications that are given are the benzodiazepines and the antidepressants. But when someone has anxiety disorder, this can create a lot of day-to-day problems. It can screw up your sleep cycle. It can certainly make you feel a lot more tense all the time. So now we're looking at, the musculoskeletal involvement. We can look at the irritability that can go along with anxiety, having a hard time concentrating. So there's a lot of ways in which anxiety certainly can be disruptive to us. And we can look at different reasons as to why these worsen. You can look at, a particular life event that maybe triggers this, but we can also look at how chronic stress brings this on. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because during the holidays, we know that people oftentimes are prone to higher levels of stress. And I actually have a podcast talking about the management of holiday stress. But we know that chronic stress is a direct correlation with anxiety disorders. So we want to make sure that we're, doing the right things. We're getting adequate sleep, we're exercising, we're taking in the right nutrients every single day. And clearly there is a whole list of different nutrients that can be beneficial when it comes to targeting anxiety, including your B vitamins. So methyl B would be a wonderful option to have on board. Magnesium for that relaxation property that magnesium can create. So the magnesium glycinate, for example, would be a good option to take in the evening before bed to really help those skeletal muscles become more relaxed, to try to promote a better night's sleep. We can look at the amino acid theanine. Certainly we know that theanine has its role in terms of mimicking the action of GABA in the body, and we know that GABA is the primary calming neurotransmitter. We can look at how the GI is so acutely involved with anxiety disorders. So taking a good comprehensive multi-strain probiotic along with the prebiotic, so the probiotic HX, for example, would be your go-to, because we want to make sure that we are laying down good healthy microbes, good healthy bacteria to allow for the proper regulation of neurotransmitters throughout the GI tract. So there are a lot of different nutrients that we can turn to, and one in particular that I want to kind of zero in on, because when we think about the multiple different systems to which anxiety can impact, I talked about the concentration, talked about the sleep, and just the energy in general. I want to zero in on 5-HTP, which is 5-hydroxytryptophan, because we know that tryptophan is an essential amino acid that we can derive just from our diet. 5-HTP, on the other hand, is not found in food. However, the body creates 5-HTP. So when we get exposed to tryptophan in our diet, the body will then convert that into 5-hydroxytryptophan, which then creates serotonin. And we know that 5-HTP, in terms of supplementation, has been studied for a wide variety of different conditions when we're looking at low serotonin-induced problems. So depression, for example, fibromyalgia. Certainly there have been multiple studies showing the benefit of 5-HTP. Insomnia or other sleep disorders, we can see how 5-HTP allowed for a more restful night's sleep. And so when we look at anxiety and we say, well, we know that we can have a lot of these, common comorbid conditions, such as the mood issues, along with the issues with sleep disturbances and those low energy states. And we know that the 5-HTP has certainly been shown to be very, very beneficial. Now, I can kind of run through many of the different clinical research trials utilizing 5-HTP. The University of Michigan did a really nice job populating the different studies for depression, fibromyalgia, insomnia, migraine headaches, for sleep disturbances, tension headaches, for eating disorders, seasonal affective disorders. And so we think about anxiety and we know that all of these have a common link, and people who, have insomnia are likely to be at a heightened state of anxiousness. We can look at someone who has seasonal affective disorder. This oftentimes can trigger a heightened level of anxiety. So the science behind how 5-HTP is working when we're taking it in our supplementation routine can really help to promote a lot of stability, and understanding the clinical effectiveness of 5-HTP, this precursor to serotonin. Understanding that if we have inadequate serotonin release in the body, this can kind of create this ripple effect of all of these different symptoms that one can potentially experience. And we know that your serotonin levels are highly, highly dependent on levels of 5-HTP. So, for example, if you are not converting that tryptophan into 5-HTP, maybe your exposure to tryptophan is quite low in your diet, and this is actually very common, then we can see that the body wouldn't have that capability to produce enough natural 5-HTP, which hence we are not then going to be able to make enough serotonin. So this is why we come back to this point about 5-HTP and in that setting of anxiety. When we look at combining that up with other key nutrients such as adrenal adaptogenic herbs, such as ashwagandha and rhodiola, and looking at L-theanine, that powerful amino acid, utilizing 5-HTP can really yield someone who is dealing with any type of an anxiety disorder a whole lot of support, because we're getting that cross-functional or that multimodal approach to all of the many different ways in which that 5-HTP can help to create a lot of stability. So when it comes to the diet, obviously we want to make sure that we are incorporating in, good healthy foods, adherence to a Mediterranean diet packed with lots of fruits and vegetables. We want to make sure that we are getting good sleep, so maybe incorporating in that theanine along with some 5-HTP and magnesium in the evening, that we are staying physically active. Physical activity is very important when it comes to those who have anxiety. So having this blend of different nutrients can create a lot of stability, and I certainly encourage you to speak with one of our nutritional experts when it comes to targeting your specific concerns when it comes to being anxious. So that is all that I have for you for today. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to the Invite Health Podcast. Remember, you can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcasts. Now, do make sure that you subscribe and you leave us a review. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we will see you next time for another episode of the Invite Health Podcast.